motherfuckers. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Edward Jones, welcome to the other side of midnight.
Good morning, Walter. Thank you very much for having me again.
Edward is a great contributor to the show. Because I screw it up, I need you to do a 3-sentence bio of your incredible achievements.
Oh, that's great, Walter. Thanks a lot. Well, I'm a former Marine, combat veteran, Vietnam officer, and I had enjoyed careers in global business development, intelligence, and academia. And I know you like to hear this, Walter. I'm also a ham radio operator.
And the call sign?
Oh, W2LCQ, Whiskey 2, Lima, Charlie, Quebec.
If you were smart, you would get in touch with him because he's one of 2 hams operating in Manhattan. Isn't that amazing? There are 3.5 million people live in Manhattan. There are exactly 2 hams. But your perspective on the situation in Iran, which changes every hour, the situation in Iran, I sure am glad I'm not the captain of a boat in the Straits of Hormuz. I would never have any idea when it was okay for me to go ahead, to go back, to go backwards, to pay a toll, don't pay a toll, to pretend I'm an Arab. What the hell? What is the situation now in Iran, in the Straits of Hormuz, Edward Jones, recognizing it will probably change tomorrow?
Well, Walter, you just articulated a key element of the Iranian strategy, which is to keep the global shipping trade industry guessing, and they're succeeding at it. But anyway, we're into 3 days of heavy shooting right now, and this all came about because the Iranian, the IRGC, attacked 7 commercial vessels with loss of life, by the way. They had about a dozen, the totals are not completely set yet, but they had a dozen killed, wounded, and missing on these ships, which caused us to take action. And over the last 3 days, the CENTCOM forces there, the military force, our military, have hit dozens of targets. Yesterday, for example, they hit 5 towns along the Strait of Hormuz coast, mostly radar sites, missile and drone launch sites. They hit one little tiny island. I suspect that was used for these little boats, that have been attacking the ships and probably launching drones. But it's a tiny island in the middle of the strait. That's been going on. And then Trump today, raised the bar now. He's threatening this is going to be big week, so to speak. They're going after bridges, power, and power plants next week. This is what he threatened for next week.
He threatened to go after their power supply, their electric supply, their electric generating plants, their distribution places with the giant transformers. He threatened to bomb them. If he bombs them, that country is out of business.
It's out of business, and it also seriously affects the population, and they've been suffering enormously there, as you know. And so, again, Trump says a lot, and as I said last night when he put forth the 20% toll, if you will, fee for ships, a safety fee, whatever it was called, a security fee, the phones rang off the hook in the White House, and his aides went to him and said, you know what that would cause? It would cause a doubling of the oil price.
Edward Jones explaining to you and me exactly what's going on in Iran in words that we can understand. He doesn't work for any given news organization and therefore has no agenda. He has a big view of the world, having been an international business person, been in the Marines, does other things that sometimes he'll talk about and he won't. This is Edward Jones explaining the situation today in Iran, which is different than yesterday, and my hunch is different than tomorrow, and what's it do to the price of gas? Go.
Great, thanks, Walter. Yeah, I deal with facts, Walter, as you know, and I take Trump. I don't take him literally. He says things, right off the cuff. For example, going next week after the Bridges power plants, and I don't think he really understands the effect that's going to have not only on the country but the people. He also raised an interesting thing again, talking off the top of his head. He talked about Pickaxe Mountain, which is, they think, a very heavily burrowed pile of rock that could possibly hold a future nuclear research center. And he said they were going to put bunker busters on this Pickaxe Mountain. I never heard of this till he mentioned it, but I looked into it, and this is the thing. So he said we have cameras all over the place, meaning we're looking at it from satellite imagery, and they don't see any activity there. But why he mentioned this, I have really no idea. That more will be revealed there. But as I said, yesterday about the details, the details will follow, and the clarification came right out the next day on his scheme to impose a fee. But then he not only pulled it back, but he said, I'm going to replace it with an investment scheme where our allies and partners will invest billions of dollars in the U.S., and it will be sort of an investment, if you will, that will cover. His outlook is very transactional, as we know. So, and the allies and partners in the Gulf, they then say, well, we're already committed billions of dollars to invest in the U.S. It's on top of it. So it gets very confusing. But all I know is that CENTCOM, the last 3 days, have been pounding Iraq. They actually went up into northern Iraq Iran on the Iraq border, and they hit an oil production facility up there, a drilling facility. So they're getting serious, and even more serious. But this doesn't really shift the Iranians, for example. I mentioned this before. Their main goal is survival. They're willing to take risks, more risks than the U.S. is willing to take. They stopped the negotiations with their funeral. They continue to do it. They upped the level of shipping attacks. And then yesterday they attacked our bases in Jordan, Kuwait, and Bahrain. So, they just keep doing this and testing Trump and our own strategy. So that's where we are today.
Edward, what do you think his next step will be? How do you think this will end? What will make it end?
I don't see it ending anytime soon, as long as we're on this track. I do give him credit, though, Walter, for I've never seen a president running a war at the same time he's proposing negotiations. And a month ago we set up in Switzerland, and it looked like a wonderful time. I went back and reviewed the footage of that meeting in Switzerland in middle of June, and the Iranian guys, our guys, they're all backslapping, hitting each other on the shoulders. And Araghchi, the foreign minister, it looked like he was a member of the Trump cabinet. He was lauding Trump, saying how wonderful he was, how grateful he was, his leadership. The same things they say around the cabinet table. And then it all unraveled over the last 4 weeks into what we have now, which is attacking shipping and the bombing all over again. So I just see this going back and forth. The last thing I want to say, though, Walter, is what's on my mind right now is what's going on in Yemen and Saudi Arabia, and people need to know about this because it looks like Iran is encouraging their Houthi proxy down there in Yemen at the foot of the Red Sea. The choke point there, which is known as the Bab al-Mandab, that's their version of the Strait of Hormuz. That choke point is half the size of the Strait of Hormuz. And if the Houthis decide to close that, and I'm watching this very, very carefully, Walter, if they decide to close that, it's going to be worse. So it says to me that the Iranians are looking at a two-pronged strategy, closing the Strait of Hormuz and then also closing the Red Sea access to the Suez Canal. And that's 4 million barrels a day come down the Red Sea into the Bab al-Mandab. And if that gets closed, it's going to be awful.
Shouldn't he call it the Strait of America? Isn't that one of his missions? Shouldn't he just call it the Strait of America? Edward Jones, thank you very much for being on the other side of midnight, explaining that it is an endlessly fluid situation in Iran.